go.
In sales. He has been here for over 11 years and has dedicated his passion and expertise to isogenics. He's been growing and evolving.
That's the wrong one. I'm sorry. Okay, this is the 40-minute one without an introduction. Unfortunately, I don't have. I thought that was the introduction. Yeah, hang on.
Go to full screen once you start playing it.
Hang on. Okay, yeah. Let me do this.
Oh, Susan, you're going to know this story. Showed up to dinner. She said, "Did you bring a book and a pen?" I was like, "No." She had me.
Sorry about that. Okay.
32 years old. Yeah, crazy. Then, when I was 50, I ended up going to Banner University, getting admitted with wild pancreatitis. Like I was sick. ICU, my head was the size of, they said, a massive sausage. My liver was inflamed. I was looking at possibly a liver transplant. Anyhow, I recovered, got out of there, and then I went hunting for a lady. And I don't know how many of you in this room know Susan Sly. Yeah. I stalked that woman. I was calling Isogenics. I couldn't get a hold of her. I was getting a hold of her executive assistant, nothing. Eventually, I was able to make contact with her, had a great introduction, and then my husband and I got invited to dinner with her and her husband. Now, if you know Susan, you're going to know this story. Showed up to dinner. She said, "Did you bring a book and a pen?" I was like, "No." She handed me a hardcover black book, purple pen. I'll never forget that. And she absolutely transformed my life. And that was my discovery of isogenics. June 17th, 2017, I planted my flag and proudly became a part of isogenics. Yeah. Now remember, I'm a very busy healthcare professional, but 12 weeks later, I became Crystal Executive. Yeah, I'm working. I did my calls driving to work. I did my calls driving home from work. I figured it out amongst my busy day, but it was literally transformative. How many of you guys remember New Year's kickoff? I was at New Year's kickoff, backyard party, and I got challenged to a bikini contest. Oh my gosh. I was one of those women who wear the roll down bikini, rolled up bikini, you know? You would never see me on stage in a bikini. Anyhow, I took the bet, hired a trainer, and 12 weeks later, I won my pro card as a bikini competitor. I won Arizona, I won Georgia, I won Canada International, and I qualified for Worlds. I was a natural competitor, drug tested, polygraphed, and it was such an honor to be part of Team Isogenics after that. What I want you to know is I'm a hustling professional now, but I've never, ever stopped my auto ship. I learned how to play the game. Isogenics is my game, and it has transformed me to who I am today. So I'm going to show you some photos. All right. On the left is me, 2015. That is my grandson, okay? And you can see they called me the skinny fat girl. I had more cellulite on the back of my butt and the back of my legs than the moon, all right? But I learned through the system and regular exercise and moving my body. 2018, that was me after meeting Susan. You can see the amount of weight I lost, and that is me, 53 years old, on stage as a pro competitor, busting a lab representing Isogenics. Right again. The ladies in the room, you can do it no matter how old you are. I am 58 years old today and very proud mother, grandmother, wife. All right, so let's give it up to Isogenics. I really want to edify them. This is important to me because I live this every day, and I want to applaud them for taking the lead here on women's health, getting someone up here to speak, to educate you, to empower you. This is where the movement needs to be. Women's healthcare is not a fad. It is real. We are 51% of the global population. 51. And I really get annoyed when they tell me, you know, the aortic size is this and it's the man's size. No, it's the woman's that we should be basing things on. But together with Isogenics and what we are doing together, we are going to actually move the market for all of us and set the standard. And I love that. So let's talk a little bit about why we are in a crisis in women's health. So did you guys know that women were excluded from clinical trials until the 1990s? Not until 1992, when the Revitalization Act came in, that they actually let us be a part of a clinical trial. Did you guys know that? That's not that long ago. Sadly, from 2013 to 2023, only 8.8% of all funding from the NIH was the National Institute of Health goes to women's health. 8.8. So we still have a lot of work to do. So typically all the information we get for drugs diagnosis are still based on male facts. For centuries, women were labeled as hysterical. And the word hysteria comes from the Greek word. And even Hippocrates, and he was Greek, believed that we had a wandering womb. And that was contributing to us being irrational, having anxiety, just like not living into what they believed our potential was. In the 19th and 20th century, they started doing hysterectomies because they felt that if they removed our uterus, we would calm down. How many of you are annoyed at that situation? Yeah, we need to calm down. So what you see on the side of your screen there in studies is in my field in cardiovascular. And it says 34% of women are involved in clinical trials. That is skewed because pulmonary hypertension is a woman's disease, and you can see it's 70%. So still really in clinical trials, we're sitting around 25% of women being involved. We're still misdiagnosed in heart attacks, strokes, autoimmune diseases, you know, many, many diseases. But this is an important fact for all of you, men and women, to know. Less than 20% of obstetrics and gynecologists are trained in menopause. Trained. We get trained about having children and all those pieces, but we don't get trained in menopause. Less than 7% of internal medicine residents today get any kind of menopause training. How many of you have noticed the movement on social media? Yeah. So we're in the right time, right place right now to hustle and opportunities with all of our products that we have. So there's a cultural message always like, go get a walk in the sunshine, just push through, but we expect better. So there is a perfect storm going on. Right now, we know there's women less than 35 or 35 and up in perimenopause. There's a lot of changes going on in our body, a lot of environment that we're exposed to. But what we know is women spend 40% of their life in this stage. And I'm going to help you understand what that means in a future slide. But 40%. This is not a year or 2 years. And so typically women in this stage, they're trying to up their career. They've probably got aging parents, maybe they're going through relationship changes. And most importantly, statement of this is the highlight time of your life that you must take charge of your health. Absolutely. Too often we dismiss this stage, but this is critical. You need quality of life, not quantity of life. And so you must pay attention to what is going on in your body and how you're treating your body. So what we're going to move on is I want to talk a little bit about some stages of women's health. And so make sure you got your pens out, because literally you're going to need your pens and paper. So menarche, for men in the room, that means the time that a woman has her first period. And the average age for a woman is age 12. But we're seeing women at age 9 and 10 starting a period. How many of you in the room know someone, a young woman who had their period very young? Well, we know that's not a good thing. And why is that happening? Anybody in the room know why that's happening? Food, yes, thank you. Exposure to hormones, food, right? So these women are starting their period earlier, but we know that increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, metabolic disease, hypertension. And so we really want to pay attention to that. And so I ask every woman who comes in for a consult, when did you start your first period? They're kind of like, isn't she cardiology? Isn't she genetics? Like, this is really odd. And I ask every woman, when did you start menopause? So we know in a study, it's called the Y study, it was 20 years that women have an increased risk of having a major cardiovascular event if they started their period early. And that, look at that, 1 in 3 women will have non-obstructive cardiovascular disease. So they're going to have heart problems, not blockages, but very serious. The next thing I need you to understand is premature estrogen loss. It's very common, and that means a woman is losing her estrogen really before she should. The average age of menopause is 50.6, okay? But it's an abrupt loss, and it can come from surgery. Like me, I had my ovaries out at 32, can come from chemopause. So 5 million women in the United States are breast cancer survivors. So think of that, all those women who went into chemopause. Other things like premature ovarian failure, PCOS, things can contribute. But what we know is early menopause massively increases your risk for cardiovascular disease, and we really, really want to pay attention to that. So ACC is American College of Cardiology, AHA is American Heart Association, and they actually have scientific statements saying that if a woman had premature menopause, she's post-menopause, had high blood pressure during pregnancy, massive increase for cardiovascular disease. And these women should be getting coronary artery calcium scores, statin therapy, or if it's appropriate, we really want to monitor them close because we know their risk is massive. So this is a slide I really wanted to talk about. And you can see in the slide when I said 40% of your life. So when we have menopause, that is strictly 1 day of your life, that term. It's just misled to most of us. But we have this period where we are born, then we become childbearing years, and then our estrogen starts to wax and wane and go all over the place. Things start happening. We're not sure what's happening. And then we go through that total depletion. Really important for you to know when we're looking at women every day struggling, that there is 6,000 women every day entering menopause just in the United States. Think of all those customers for you, right? 6,000 women a day, 1.3 million. Less than 19% of women get a diagnosis. How shocking is that? They literally, so that's 80% of women come in with incredible symptoms, unmet needs, and they're not treated. And so that pushes the average woman, according to the National Menopause Society, the average woman goes through 5 to 7 providers, desperately seeking care, looking for answers, looking for solutions, and still feeling very unmet. Menopause, so these are the stages. You have perimenopause, and there's actually 2 stages, early and late. Very important for you to know where you're at. Very different symptoms. Maybe you have brain fog. How many put your glasses on your head, you can't find it, and it's actually on your head, right? You're looking for, like those are, you can't get your words out, you're not quite sure. So perimenopause is typically 2 to 10 years, but women will often have sleep disturbances. They're going to be having a little bit of brain fog. They're going to be having vasomotor symptoms, which is hot flashes, night sweats. And it is 2 to 10 years, but it can go for longer, it can go for shorter. Menopause, 1 day. You've gone 12 months, no period. Okay, hallelujah, you're in menopause. Next day, you were in post-menopause. And that is for the rest of your life. And the stages in there are early and late, and they're really, really important as well to know what stage are you in. Are you in early post-menopause or late? Because the symptoms will come. And they're really important for women to know. So what are those symptoms? First ones are the physical. Those are the ones most of us all know about. It's vasomotor symptoms, hot flashes, night sweats. You got insomnia, fragmented sleep. You got, how many heard about frozen shoulders, right? That's going on. And a lot of weight gain, slower metabolism. Then you have these, emotional and mental well-being, a lot of mood swings, anxiety, cognitive changes. They're really struggling, and a loss of motivation going on. They're going to have genital urinate. Your pelvic area is so rich in estrogen that you will see the changes someday. That's going to be, painful sex. That's going to be vaginal dryness. That's going to be urinary incontinence. It could be prolapse. So very important that women are doing exercises and staying fit and controlling their weight. This next slide is the most important to me. It is when we're looking at the silent but serious. So number 1 is osteoporosis. 1 in 2 women are going to have a fracture over 50. Isn't that stunning? Because our bones love estrogen. Cardiovascular disease skyrockets when you're in post-menopause. And I'm not going to get into the study that got everybody confused, the Women's Initiative study, where all the HRT got taken off the market. But the literature is very different now, and that'll be a future conversation. But most women are applicable for hormone replacement therapy. Yes, it's very important. Type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome, blood pressure is going up, cholesterol is going up, and these are game changers in your health and cognitive decline. Did you know that 2/3 of all Alzheimer's is women? How many of you in the room knew that? Okay, not very many of you. That is due to estrogen decline. So lots of research going on there trying to help support women, why we are so susceptible to our receptors in our brain. So we're going to do a deep dive into heart disease and menopause. This is my passion, so everyone buckle up, let's get going. And I'm going to give you some facts that are going to shock you. First fact, 400,000 women are going to die in the United States this year from heart disease. That's 500,000 people. What really pushes me to do what I do every day is one woman drops dead every 80 seconds in the United States from heart disease. Every 80 seconds. Just imagine. Did you know women get less CPR quicker than men? When people go down, men look at a woman, they kind of stare at her for a while, but men, they jump all over it. They're scared to touch them. It's a well-known fact. It's well documented. So please pay attention if you see those women. Heart disease has been the #1 killer of women for over 100 years. We call it the 100-year reign. Did anyone in the room know that? No. So we've not done a good job getting out there and educating our population to let them know this is important. Heart disease is also the leading cause of our maternal population, our pregnant ladies. The United States has the highest death rate for pregnancy of any developed country in the world, folks. Stunning, right? And so we really, really must pay attention, get out there and educate. And these women typically die within 60 days of discharge of having their baby. What we're seeing in the demographics right now is our older populations in the 50s and 60s. And by the way, we're not old, okay? But I'm just going to use that term. But our younger population, we really need to pay attention to because they don't realize this is a 100-year reign. This is the big killer. They all think it's another disease, which is, what do people all think women die of? Breast cancer. You're right. So let's talk about that. What are the myths and the legends, or the rumors and the truths, whatever we want to call that? So the myth is heart disease is a man's disease, but actually more women die of heart disease than men because they're undiagnosed, mistreated, they get to the cath lab later, all those pieces. But everyone thinks breast cancer is the #1 cause, but all cancers combined for women don't equal the death rate of heart disease. Write that down. That is leverage for you with your business. Heart disease, isogenics. Wow, I'm the poster child. They say you're going to feel chest pain. Women often don't. They come to me and say, I'm just kind of tired. I don't have my mojo. I'm just kind of short of breath. Put them on the treadmill, stress test. Ooh, it looks real bad. So very important for you to know that. Doesn't matter what your body habitus is, whether you're thin, thick, tall, short. It's not discretionary. Maybe you have genetics that are really strong contributing. And finally, people always think you're going to feel something before it happens. 60% of women who die had no previous symptoms. So very important that they're aware of their health. The heat map that you see there, I use this heat map all the time, is the death rate of women from heart disease. If you looked at that heat map 10 years ago, it was just a little bit over on the East Coast. Now I can imagine what's happening. You can see it's moving across. We have California, all kinds of states now that are rapidly getting red. And it's going to continue to get worse because they're telling us our children have a high potential to die before us with all of the things that are going on. So we have a lot of work to do. So right now, 1 in 3 of you have heart disease. That is the current fact. So when we're looking at that, we want to be educating. Again, write this down. 1 in 3 of you as women have heart disease, usually coronary artery disease, which means plaque or some kind of plaque that's going on in your vessels. high blood pressure, high cholesterol. But after menopause, those risks markedly escalate. And so we need to be paying attention to that population. So what happens to us during this period? So we know menopause, it calls a time of change, a time of transition. I don't know, all these words and lingo keep coming up for it. But it's just a part of who we are, right? And so we know that I had a great conversation yesterday with one of the family here at Isogenics. Premature menopause is before the age of 40, early is before the age of 45. So if you know anyone who had menopause at that time, really high risk of cardiovascular disease because your vessels, your body love estrogen and you've lost your estrogen too soon. What happens is when we're losing our sex hormones, how many of you notice fat distribution, right? Things start changing. Cholesterol is going up. Your vessels absolutely love the estrogen for their tone and all that elasticity. But we start seeing your bad cholesterol, which is your LDL on there. We'll talk a bit more about that. It's going up. We see that your ApoB, and your ApoB, you should be getting done if you're getting your cholesterol drawn, is the stickiness. And what you think is sugar, honey, how sticky it is. That's your cholesterol. So we test your ApoB and see how sticky is it, and it goes up in menopause. We know that you start having, changes in your metabolics. But what's really important is let's talk about what's actually happening inside our body, okay? So here we visceral fat. Dr. Paul did an amazing job talking about visceral fat. And I was saying to the team backstage, I should have just put a couple of his slides back in here to highlight, what he was saying about how many of you remember the tips and the taxes? Yeah. So Dr. Paul is a wizard. I call him, he's a wizard. He's so brilliant. And he was explaining to you our systems and how things like cholesterol was going down, visceral fat was going down. So here I want you to understand what's going on in a woman, why they're going up. So visceral fat does go up. Body distribution starts to change. TG is your triglycerides. It's a blood fat. And triglycerides tend to come from carbohydrates, bread, pasta, rice, potatoes, corn on the cob, alcohol. It's going to go up in menopause. It just starts ticking like a clock. Next is your LDL. And your LDL, I want you to think of L, you want low, and H, you want high. Okay, so just use those acronyms. But LDL is your bad cholesterol, and it is the cholesterol that causes heart disease in men and women. Okay, it will start going up. Your HDL is your good cholesterol. So we want that high, but when we're going through menopause and our estrogen's going down, your HDL starts ticking down. So you can see that misbalance starts happening. How many of you in this room have had your Lp(a) tested? Oh, there's going to be a whole lot of testing going on when you guys all leave this room today. Okay, so let's talk about Lp(a). It is a marker in your cholesterol panel, men and women. Next yearly labs for your cholesterol, you want an Lp(a), fairly new on the market in the last 5 years. It is a marker of risk within your cardiovascular panel, in your cholesterol. We only test you once or twice in your life because that doesn't really change, but it helps empower you to make some positive changes in your life. In menopause, it will tick up again, but very, very important. So what are the tests you're going to add on to your cholesterol panel when you go back home? And ApoB, right? Okay, make sure you wrote those down. They're going to go, oh, that's fantastic. You're so informed. The other things that start to happen is diabetes, so insulin dysregulation, because it really likes estrogen. Your blood pressure is ticking up. I sat last evening with someone saying blood pressure was going up, and just your whole fight or flight starts getting messed up. So think of this. We need to go back. We need to optimize body weight. Are we in the right place at the right time now with Isogenics? Yeah, we're in the room. So what we know is elevated body mass index, and Dr. Paul talked about that yesterday, is associated with an increased risk of hot flashes and night sweats. Did you women in the room know that? So those of us who carry more weight will tend to have more of those during this time period. So we know that weight loss helps improve that. So we want to encourage women to lose weight, try to get better down into where their BMI should be. But it's also a win-win for people like me in cardiovascular and director of hormone health, that you're also reducing your blood pressure, you're reducing your cholesterol, you know, all of those pieces that are so important. Chronic pain, chronic disease. We're just nailing it when we're getting women to do that. But what's really important as well to add on is sleep disturbances from vasomotor symptoms. How many of you are women in the room that have sleep disturbances? Yep, lots of women. How many in this room had a hot flash today? Yeah, okay. How many of you had a night sweat last night? Okay, so what we know is when women have hot flashes, night sweats, their cortisol is higher in the morning, they're not feeling good, they're looking for carbohydrates, a double espresso, you know, their glucose tolerance isn't good, they have decreased energy, and we know that sleep is the basis of really important health. So we really want to support women to get a good night's sleep. So currently, there's 50 million women in the United States that have menopause. 50 million. How many are entering every day? 6,000. And 1 in 2 are truly suffering with symptoms. So I'm going to talk a little bit more later about our products like Harmonia and why we could be making a difference for our women. Yeah. Imagine that market out there. So one of the things I like to talk about is what needs to change. What are we doing as a society, as a company? What do we need to change? And I really like people to go back to basics. How many of you watch the Blue Zones on Netflix? Yeah. Well, I recommend everyone in this room watch that movie. It is absolutely fantastic. But we don't need hype. We need facts. We need information. And so the Blue Zones are the 5 places in the globe that where humans live to 100. And they're called centurions. And those centurions tend to be 80 to 85% women. But the men who make it to a centurion tend to be a lot more healthy than women. Women tend to have a lot of chronic disease. Some of the amazing places where we have Blue Zones, so where Sharon's from Italy, where she's sometimes living, sorry, not from, but living. So we know that Sardinia, Italy is a Blue Zone. How many of you been to Greece? Yeah. So if you've been to Italy or Greece, do they do a lot of walking? A ton of walking. Do they eat a lot of fresh food and vegetables? Yes. So they get back to the basics. A lot of natural movement, eating healthy. And how many of you, you've traveled there, just feel like they have purpose? They're very connected, a lot of music and social connections, and maybe it's church. So a lot of connection, and that's what they see in the Blue Zones. We have one Blue Zone in the United States, and that is Loma Linda, California. And it is a group of people who are Latter-day Saints, very connected, eating very healthy. You go across the freeway, and it is a completely different story in the average age of death. I will share with you the average, if you want to look up the average age of death of where you live, it's called the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. You can Google it, put your zip code in, and you'll know what the average age of death of that area is. So this is our perfect link to isogenics. We want to fuel women. And the big things for me are protein, fat loss, and looking at muscle preservation. So many of us think food is fuel, but it's really important in guiding our hormones, our metabolic parameters. And so we must make sure we're addressing that. So we all know when we're in our 40s and 50s, man, I cannot eat like I was in my 20s. Things have changed. And so we need to protein pace. And I am a Dr. Paul protein pacing. Literally, I'm the walking, talking vision. I did that. I continue to do that. I bookend my days with protein shakes in the morning and at night. That works great for me. I was the woman who ate chocolate chip cookies at 2 a.m. I would wake up hungry, and it probably was menopause. I was probably flashing, going looking. I'd creep back to bed, and my husband would say, "Did you brush your teeth?" And I was just like, "Oh man." But I struggled. So I protein pace, live and eat and breathe that. But it's important for your metabolism, you know, muscle maintenance. And what I want to describe to you, when I describe carbohydrates and protein to my patients, carbohydrates are kindling. They get the fire burning. Boom, it just goes, right? You feel that when you have some really good carbs. Protein is your log on the fire. So if you have a diabetic who's going down, you give them juice, you give them whatever, and you give them an egg sandwich and peanut butter or whatever, because you need to have that control. It is the same thing for you for being hungry, feeling good. You need to have protein on a regular basis. So I eat breakfast, lunch, afternoon snack, supper, bed. That is my routine. Live it, been like that now for 8 years. You want to ensure you're not losing muscle, because at the age of 30, you start losing muscle and it continues to escalate when we're in 40s, 50s, and 60s. So protein is really important. And Dr. Paul taught you guys yesterday, what is the number that we're looking for? Does everybody remember how much protein? Exactly. 1 gram at least per pound of your ideal body weight. The next thing is when we're doing this, muscle is so important, but you want to make sure the protein you're eating is healthy, it's clean, you know, that it's really helping our hormone support. And we all know the Counter Soup diet, the South Beach diet, all those diets, they do not work. We crash, we have fluctuations, we don't feel good, we have fatigue. So when we look at modern wellness, we want it to be simple, we want it to be duplicatable, and we want it to make sense for our lifestyle. And so I love Isogenics, first and foremost, because it was science-backed. And that is why I joined. I saw the science, I read the studies, it was real. And that is important for me, for my reputation. It takes forever to build a reputation, but it can be gone in a second, right? We've all heard of that. And Isogenics is perfect. I love that. Protein pacing is easy. You've got so many options. Adaptogens. Now, where is that a perfect fit for all of this cortisol levels, lack of sleep, everything that's going on? We need our adaptogens. And so when you're looking at nourishing yourself, it is, again, very, very important to understand that we eat to nourish our bodies, our hormones, our brain, everything is one big, massive package. So let's talk about Harmonium. Okay. How many of you women here in the room are on it? Woo! All right. Me too. And I do take a patch. I stuck my patch on this morning, okay? But I also take Harmonia. Absolutely love it. And let's talk about why. Why is it such a great product? First of all, it's hormone-free. So I want you to know that. And so we know it has a couple of really incredible products in it. Estrogen 100. And Estrogen 100 helps to reduce the hot flashes, night sweats, those feelings that are going on. And remember, I said, how many women have vasomotor symptoms? 75 to 80%. So pretty much all of us, right? We could really use that. The other important product in Harmonia is saffron extract. And saffron has, again, both of them have been studied a lot in clinical trials, is very calming, very soothing, helps women perhaps sleep better. The most important thing I want you to know is Harmonia doesn't work in 24 hours, but either does a patch, either does any of our hormones. Everything takes time. So when you're helping your women get on this, let them know, you may see some changes in about 4 weeks, but continue. It's going to be consistency. And we're really looking for around that 60 to 90 days. If I prescribe prescription drugs, it's the same thing. It's going to take time. If I'm giving you a statin for cholesterol, I don't test you for 8 weeks because cholesterol doesn't move. It's stubborn. Your thyroid, another hormone. We don't test you for 8 weeks. So this is the same. So make sure you set them up for success to realize it's not going to happen in a week. It's going to take time. But what an incredible product. I'm going to say again, how many women could start this every day right now? 6,000, right? So let's get out there, 6,000 women a day. All right, I had them put Tri-Release up because I'm your Tri-Release girl. Tri-Release morning and night for me for years. Because of number one, I like the 3 kinds of protein in there. I love the high protein content of 25 grams. But for me, I like the low carbohydrates in there. I like to eat my carbs versus drink my carbs. So I'm very conscientious on alcohol, fancy coffees. I don't do any foo-foo-y drinks. because this is a work in progress every day. So for me, try release was a winner. Yeah, absolutely. How many of you here use try release? Yeah, thank you. Chocolate or vanilla? No. Okay, I'm a chocolate girl. Absolutely love chocolate. I do love vanilla. I love brewing a cup of coffee, and then I put ice in it, and then I put my try release in, and I blend it all up, and I have my try release frappuccino. How good does that sound? All right, so really, really love try release. Bookend my day, morning and night. Women in this room, you cannot eat the amount of protein that is required for your body weight. You've got to have some shakes within your day. Next, creatine. I've actually been on creatine for 5 years. And creatine is not for bodybuilders. It is one of the most clinically researched, supplements that are out there. And what I love about this is people are now aware that it's supporting, yes, your muscles and your recovery and all of that, but your brain health. So everyone here should be on creatine, 5 grams a day. The other part I really love about this creatine is it dissolves impeccably in whatever you put it in. And so love creatine. Everybody should be on creatine. Well documented in research that it helps maintain your brain focus, mental clarity, and boy, a lot of days I could really use that. Finally, I use hydrate every single day. I was panicking yesterday because I didn't have my hydrate. And people were lending it to me. I'm well known that I drink at least 1 or 2 a day. And why is it? I tell all my women patients when they come in to be on electrolytes. First of all, our electrolytes are clean. They're clean. They don't have all the artificial sweeteners and all that in there. But women are experiencing hot flashes, night sweats, palpitations. And so we need to be topping up our electrolytes a lot. I get a lot of headaches. How many of you in this room get a lot of headaches? Yeah, you need to make sure you're hydrating all the time. Okay, yeah. So I get a lot of headaches, and a lot of headaches can be due to hormone fluctuations. You'll notice some women, when they're having their cycles, will have more headaches, but it's just part of what happens with perimenopause, menopause. So get some electrolytes in you every single day. Don't judge me, but I pregame with hydrate as well. How many of you heard a younger population, they pregame, they go for a shot or whatever. So I have hydrate, because you do not metabolize alcohol like you used to. How many of you get headaches or palpitations when you have a drink now? I hardly drink alcohol anymore. But if I do, I always make sure I also have hydrate before, because you'll have women saying, I have palpitations 2 minutes or 2 hours later after they drink. So really, really important to make sure you're hydrating. So yeah, it is. It's really important. And most women don't know your liver is very estrogen rich as well. And so that's why women start to see intolerances with alcohol as they're aging. And again, I had a great conversation. I had a lot of conversations last night. I was doing a ton of education everywhere I was walking yesterday. And so, yeah, absolutely. If you're having palpitations, whatever, it's not for you anymore. Alcohol is not your thing. So, but make sure you're hydrating. Okay, so this is what we put together. This is what I wanted. So the Women's Wellness Bundle. What do I think is essential for every woman in this room? Number 1, you should all be on Harmonia. If it's appropriate for you, yes, absolutely, get on the Harmonia. Next, try release protein. Let's bookend our days. Let's learn how to play the game, or if you want to do breakfast and lunch, but get on try release. Absolutely incredible. I live, eat, and breathe try release. Next, creatine. Men and women, everybody, we all need to be on creatine, right? Does everybody agree? Absolutely. And finally, hydrate. I think I've got every flavor down pat. I always have to rotate, but hydrate is really incredibly important for all of you. So I would encourage you all, 20% off this package right now. Absolutely fabulous. So I am wrapping up. I'm on the home stretch. But I want to know truly in this room. So when I typically do presentations, I hand out a piece of paper to everybody in the room. And I ask for, what are the 3 impact points that hit you the most that you did not know today? So when I come back, I make sure I talk about those a bit more. So I'd like to just quickly, I only have 1 minute left. How many of you in this, how many in this room or someone is willing to stand up? What was the most impact point I said today in 2 words? Stand up and just shout it out. Testing, perfect. Yep. Perfect. Heart disease, #1 cause of death. They thought it was breast cancer. Over here. Yes. The comparison of studies in women to men. All right, well, I want to thank you all. I'm going to bring up our next presenter, but I sincerely want to thank you all for the opportunity to be here. I am here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. For you all.